webinar on Chianti Classico. We are scheduled to have 4 producers today, and we're having problems with 2 of them connecting. But 2 of them have made the connection, and happy to see them. So we will start out on the screen, at least on my screen on the left here, with Riecine and Jacopo Di Battista from Querceto di Castellina. Ciao, come state?
Ciao.
We are okay. Good. Thank you.
Nice to see you again after about, what was it, 2 months or something? Something
Yeah,
like
2
that.
months ago.
2 months.
Yeah, 2 months.
So,
Yeah. Anche il stesso per Alessandro Campatelli from Riecine. Ciao, Alessandro.
Ciao.
And
Really
I'm hoping,
nice to see you again.
of course, thank you. Il piacere è mio. And I'm hoping that we will have everything settled pretty soon with 2 other wineries. One is Castello La Leccia, who we were connecting with Guido Orzalesi, and also Querceto, and that will be Michela and Vittorio Rossi. So I don't know what the problem is. I've emailed them; they haven't connected. But
I'll try to send an SMS in our common group. So
okay, all right, thank you.
But by the way, Tom, how are things where you are? Is it already pretty cold?
It's starting to get a little cold, but it really isn't too bad yet. We've had like no snow, and I mean there were some very warm days recently, so it's been we can't complain. And we keep saying this. I think the last day in November it was like 70 degrees, so it's just
wow.
That stuff never happens. So, but it's been beautiful. So anyway, let's start, and like I said, hopefully we'll get these other people connected real soon. So. Alessandro, you just mentioned it was raining.
Yeah, I'm trying to reach them. I'm sorry. Okay. No reply.
You just mentioned a minute ago before we started that it was raining. And
yeah,
here's Guido. Okay.
Hi, Tom. Sorry for the delay.
Guido, that's not a problem. As they said in Italy, you're early. But
ciao, Guido.
Ciao. Come state?
This is
bene,
everyone.
Bene.
This is Guido Orzalesi from Castello La Leccia in Castellina in Chianti. And we just need 1 more, or 2 more actually, 1 more winery, Querceto, Michela and Vittorio Rossi. So, but hopefully they will connect very soon. Let's get started. Alessandro, you mentioned it was raining and you were kind of smiling about that because it was very little rain this year.
Actually after this summer, so the rain was everything that we prayed for. So now we are need just rain, and it's doing just the right rain. So it's raining since 1 week right now, and it's perfect raining. The temperature are the perfect for this period of the year. Actually, we still had more days, but are forecasted other 7-10 days of rain. So I think this year the season started properly. So let's cross our fingers and let's pray for a good 2023 vintage. Yes.
This post-harvest rain is important to have water reserves, right? Because you've had a lot of drought.
Actually it's fundamental. So I have usually the big rains in Tuscany was around November, December, and January. In our zone there was some snow usually. In the last vintages, the rain season was postponed to the end of winter, beginning of spring, but it was important for the water reservoir. Last year was dramatic because we didn't have rain basically never. So from the end of the harvest 2021 till August last year, mid-August of 2022, there was just few rains, and it was dramatic. I have to admit that we we at the end, the quality of the vintage was perfect somehow. So probably the roots of the wines in Chianti Classico. I'm speaking for Riecine, not for the other zone. Obviously, we are in Gaiola and Chianti, but I have to admit that the result was positive. Obviously, the quantity was more or less on the line of 2021. But yes, last year was dramatic. So this rain, to be back to the original question, so the rain of this beginning of the season 2022-2023 are really great.
Guido,
Oh, sorry. Apparently, Stefania, she just wrote us that they are not, just you have to accept Michela because apparently she's not able to get in the chat.
Okay, strange. They've got the same invitation as everyone, so there must be a problem with their connection. So it's too bad. So anyway, so Jacopo, while I have you, thank you for letting me know that. I was there earlier this year, and we all said it really was dramatically hot, and there really was little rain. Tell us about 2022 and the last few vintages. Where you were at in Castellina?
Me, yeah. So 22 for us was a little bit challenging because, like everyone, we had problems with water, and we had also, I don't know, probably I mentioned to you when we saw you last time, we had problems with animals. So beside that, we have fence all over.
Right.
We lost quite a big percentage of our crops. So apart from the drought, even if we are high, so just usually we don't suffer too much from the heat. So I would say like 2022 for us was really challenging. The last vintage is like when I sent you the notes, I'm pretty happy. I would say from the last 3 vintages, probably I'm more happy on the 2019. Because it's what I think that everyone agree with me. It's what I consider more a classic vintage. Like 2021 was quite interesting. Between 21 and 22, of course, I personally I prefer 2021.
Okay.
But just we suffer like today. I think just to give you an idea, we have our average rainfall per year, it's about 900 millimeters, 950. And today we are going up, of course, like in the last days, we had like a lot of rain, but we are at still now about like 600, 650. So we are, and now, just we are at the end of the year. So this is quite significant. I'm talking for myself, I'm talking all the time about this stuff when I do the visit and when I speak to people, because it's quite funny. Because when I started in '98 to do the production at Querceto, being at 1,750 feet average, I had problems sometimes to reach like 13% of alcohol. Now, just like alcohol is crazy. I bought all the Merlot 2020, it's like 15. That wow. It's something. So this is like in 25 years. It's not. I'm not talking like in 50 years. This is just a few words to understand everything.
Guido, what can you tell me about this year, 2022, and also really the last few vintages, 19, 20, 21, in terms of heat, in terms of size? It's a long question, I know, or a big question, but what did you see in your vineyards?
But as Alessandro and Jacopo were mentioning, 2022 began as a very scary vintage. In the end, we were surprised by some rainfalls in the end of August and beginning of September, which actually helped the plant to get a good ripeness. So that was almost surprising to me. I was very worried that the result would have been much more dramatic than what it has happened. And then we had the balance in the grapes with the acidity and alcohol. So that was good. 19 and 20, for me, at La Leccia, 19 was a little bit surprising in the sense that there was less difference from what I call the selection. So the grapes that we usually use for the Riserva and the single vineyard Bruciagna compared to the Chianti Classico. I found the Chianti Classico perfectly balanced and very nice, but there was no difference in not an high difference with the quality of the Riserva and Bruciagna. For example, in fact, we didn't produce Bruciagna, the single vineyard, in 2019, and instead 2020 I found it a very good and balanced vintage, and also a vintage in which the difference between the annata and the selection was higher. There was a big difference from the two, being the annata very typical, still very, very good, but more towards the freshness and the deepness and the concentration, I would say, yes. Of the Riserva and the Gran Selezione were standing very high. So we were very happy about that vintage.
Now, I'm surprised to hear you say that you did not produce the Gran Selezione in 2019, yet the others here and everybody else I talked to in Tuscany raves about that year. So what was the problem? Why didn't you produce it?
More that the problem was also my first vintage at Castello La Leccia, and I found the Gran Selezione less interesting in 2019 than other vintages, the single vineyard. And from that reason, we have used the grapes of the Bruciagna for the Riserva. So we basically downgrade the single vineyard and use the part of those grapes for the Riserva. Was just our choice.
Okay, sure. So I will look forward to the 2019 Riserva then. That should be. Let's talk a little bit about the big news. Well, it's been going on the last year or so, but with these new geographical divisions, if that's the correct word, but these UGAs, UGA. We have Castellina with both the two of you, and then also Gaiole, and you could always put that on the back label as to let people know where your winery is. But now it has started now, correct? You can, is it with this vintage or next vintage? You can now list Castellina and Chianti or Gaiole and Chianti.
Yeah, actually it's without Chianti, so it will be like Gaiole will be Castellina. Okay. I think they can go back, but we need the final approval from the EU or like the Ministry of Agriculture. I don't know.
I think that the first vintage where it can be on the label would be 2023. Okay.
And there are 11 total, but I think there's only going to start with 7. Is that correct? Because there's 4 of them that are very small, and kind of the first 7 are very famous, and they want to use that as kind of a test run for this system. So,
yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. It's 7, and the other 3, the other 4 are at the moment under particular checking because they were sort of sub-zones or smaller zones. So It's depending on how those producers will manage the association, and a further decision would be eventually taken. Yeah.
Okay. I was joking with someone from the consortium that, when you pronounce it in English, UGA is Uga. And when I grew up and watched cartoons on Saturday morning, and someone was driving their car and they would beep the horn, it would go Uga, Uga. So that's just my association with the term Uga. But I don't think they thought of that when they came up with that name. I assume that this was overwhelmingly approved by the producers, these new designations.
Sorry, I didn't understand a few last words.
I assume that this whole new system of UGA, this was overwhelmingly approved by the producers?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah. 97% of the producer, I think.
That's a large number anywhere, but I think in Italy, that's like an astounding number. It's just like You can't get 12 Italians to agree on anything. So 97% is great. So, and do you see that helping sales, or is it just an added layer of, you know, of security for consumers and just something that was needed?
So to be honest, from my side, I really appreciated the last step of the UGA decision from Consortium. So because they also changed the blend, so they decided to remove the international varieties from the blend. So I think that that it really will increase a bit more the image of the Chianti Classico, and to find finally how to show proudly show the terroir and the variety of the Chianti Classico. So that's what made me decided to go ahead for the Gran Selezione, because as you know, our first Gran Selezione was 2019. So we decided after the decision of Consortium to embrace this kind of top level of the Chianti Classico. So I think that it was a right decision from Consortium, because till the last reunion of the Consortium, it was exactly like the other Chianti Classico, with 30 months of aging, with the exception of the composition of the grapes that should come everything from the controlled grapes, controlled winery vineyard. So that now it changed. So it's 30 months, still 30 months, but just local varieties. So 90% Sangiovese, and the rest 10% is just local varieties. So any more international varieties. So, and we consider from our side, from Riecine, that we always push the Sangiovese and the local variety. We consider very, very strong step and very in the right direction. So we decided to embrace the Gran Selezione for that reason.
But this elimination of the international varieties is only with the Gran Selezione, correct?
Just with the Gran Selezione at the moment, yes.
Yeah.
And to me is also sometimes it's difficult to talk about the Chianti Classico when you think it as an all appellation with the different. I think that the UGA will help very much in understanding better the style of some zone compared to others, in the sense that before, I think when you were trying to introduce to a consumer and giving them a tasting of the Chianti Classico, sometimes was sort of confusing. No, you had the style of Gaiole or Radda compared to Castellina or many others, or Panzano. The wines were different, and the consumer was difficult for them with such a big appellation, I think, to understand what to expect when they were ordering just the Chianti Classico. Now with the UGA, it will take time for them to understand the different subzones, but once it's getting into their mind, I think that will help a lot. Because once a consumer will know that that in the style of one UGA, it's the style that the terroir of one UGA would deliver in the wine is what suits his palates more than others, then following that UGA, he is not so attached to the name, to the brand of the producer, but is more attached to the terroir where the wine is produced.
Exactly. That's an excellent point. And I think so. I've always thought that, you know, sometimes we can make things complicated, but it's better to have more information than less information. So yeah, you get that point across. And on that point, you know, and all of you, you're from Castellina, Jacopo, you're from Castellina, Alessandro, you're from Riecine, from Gaiole in Chianti.
Yeah.
And if I let's make this statement. If I say that, in my opinion, and just, I could be wrong, but if I look at the wines from Panzano, I would say that those are probably some of the most powerful, rugged styles of Chianti Classico. So if we use that as a reference point, Alessandro, you can talk first about Gaiole. How does Gaiole compare with Panzano?
So to be honest, so the zone of Panzano, Radda, and the upper part of Gaiole and Chianti are pretty similar. So in the zone where Riecine is located, it's really similar to Panzano, and I lost the image.
It's just one of your
Ah,
vineyards.
okay. So because we are in the north part of Gaiole and Chianti, but actually
Right.
Gaiole and Chianti, so that's another step probably of the UGA that we will have to introduce in the future, so to better describe also the comune, because just speaking about Gaiole and Chianti, there are so many differences between Haas and San Giusto Rentennano that it's on the opposite side of the comune of Gaiole and Chianti. So it's hard to speak just about Gaiole, because also in the same comune there are minimum three subzones. So, but in the area where we are, so exactly in the Macigno of the Chianti Classico, so we are really close to the Radda and Chianti and Panzano area. But it's not true for the other area of Gaiole and Chianti. So that's important that we start to describe the subzones, but it's the next step should be to enter more deep in the issue and to describe also the subzones of the single denomination, because Chianti Classico has so much to tell, and every area can express itself very different, also in the same comune.
Right, and that's first of all, I want to mention people. You said you're on the north side of Gaiole, but Gaiole, people watching should realize it's in the southeastern part of Chianti Classico.
It's in the southeastern part of the Chianti Classico, right. So we are exactly 60 kilometers from Florence, 40 kilometers from Siena, and inside of this comune we are on the northern part, so going to the Arezzo Hills. So we are close to the Badia Coltibuono monastery, so in the highest part of Gaiole and Chianti. So I'm not saying that our zone is better of the other zone of Gaiole and Chianti. It's simply that there is a huge difference, because when you dig in the soil of Riecine, you just found the Macigno of Chianti Classico. We're really close to the stones cave of Monte Grossi. So the roots are deeply, the roots of the wines are deeply digged in the Macigno. So the characteristics of our wine are taking and extracting so much from this Macigno, and it's not the same from other zones. So we have our difficulties, we have our characteristics, but are extremely different from the rest of Gaiole and Chianti. That's why I'm telling you that we are more close to the small hills that from Riecine pass to Capannelle, from Capannelle to San Donato Imperano, and then goes to Radda and Chianti. So we are on that hill.
Okay, let's move to Castellina from the southern part of Chianti Classico to more central and further west. So whoever wants to start, but tell us a little bit about Castellina in general and about your vineyard. Let's start, Jacopo, let's start with you.
So I'm a little bit, I define myself a little bit like a place on the border, because actually I'm really on the border with Radda. I'm the only winery in that area. So I have one side for a couple of like less than 2 miles. I have starts like the commune of Greve, so with Panzano basically. But my vineyards are right on the border with Radda. So part of my forest, it's under Radda territory. So for the altitude, the type of the soil, I have probably more similarities with Radda than Castellina. So just this is what Alessandro mentioned before, that it's really important. Then this is the first, the Uga, it's the first step that they did. It's really important, but then you have also to consider the subzone. Castellina, I think I don't know if I'm wrong, but I think it's the largest area in Chianti Classico. So there are completely different areas. Guido, it's one area that if you drive from Guido like 5 minutes, the soil is completely different. If you go down the direction of Monteriggioni, so it's completely, so Castellina is quite various.
Yeah, I looked on the consortium website, and with all the different communes, the highest number was in Greve, and then Castellina was right there with it. Those two communes were much higher in terms of the number of wineries located there. So how far apart, Guido, how far apart are you from Jacopo?
So from Jacopo,
sorry, because I have Riccardo that they are trying like to connect Michela via WhatsApp. Do you want? Yeah, let's try. Okay. I don't know if she can hear us.
Hello? Jacopo, ciao.
Ciao. She's connected with WhatsApp now, so that's...
Okay, well, this...
If you can hear, it's easy to hear, to speak with her or not.
We could try. It might be a little clumsy. We could try them in a sec, but...
I can't hear. Oh.
No, it's a little bit complicated.
Yeah, I mean, on a cell phone and she's not connected to the Zoom, I don't know that she's going to hear me.
Hello?
No, non ti sente, non ce la fa a sentirti.
Ok, allora...
I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me, though.
Ho perso l'occasione, pazienza.
Vai.
Mi dispiace.
Ok.
Salutamelo, mi dispiace.
Ok, ciao.
All right, well.
Ciao.
So she said just to say hi, and she feels sorry, but I don't know what problems she had.
Yeah, but we tried. So, Guido, how? Yes, Castellina is a very large commune. How far are you from Jacopo?
In terms of elevation, not very far, but there is an hill in between. So to drive from me to Jacopo, I think Jacopo, with your driving, Jacopo is very fast, but with a normal driving, it should be about, it's about
10 minutes, like 10 minutes, 5, yeah, a little bit less than 10 minutes. Like, come on.
Sì, però,
probably Jacopo is more close to Riecine than Castello La Leccia.
Because basically I'm on one side of the hill and to Castellina and then Monteriggioni, all the southern part, Siena, and Jacopo is on the other side of the hill that looks towards Radda. Giusto, Jacopo?
Sì, sì.
Just to make it simpler. And I agree, every subzone of the Uga can be divided in another 10 small subzone. But I think that if we want to talk about the Uga and see the major difference, I think that in Castellina we have a very good balance in between the freshness that you can find in the more freshness that you can find in Gaiola and Radda, and the balance from instead Panzano and Castelnuovo Berardenga, where I think you have more structure, in my idea, or to simplify a little bit the conversation for the people that might be watching. And I think that Castellina is really in between if we want to generalize more. Of course, if you take vineyards that are higher in elevation, and where you have more siliceous formation, so more rocky soil, of course, the style of the wine is going to be slightly different than the other. Però I think that Castellina is a good in between, ecco, a good balance of these two differences.
Okay. Let's talk about winemaking. We'll get to the specific wines toward the end here, especially the Gran Selezione. But all of you basically are traditionalists with some modern touches using Tonneau, things like that. Alessandro, I mean, you inherited this from your former winemaker from Sean O'Callaghan, but you're really very distinct in terms of how you ferment the wines with the eggs. Well, I'll put up a photo here, but talk a little bit about these concrete tanks that you use.
Yeah, so actually Riecine was totally renewed in 2013, 2014. And together with the renewal of the winery, so it was totally changed the winemaking tanks. So now we are just using for the fermentation concrete tanks of French producer Nomblot, and that one that you are showing right now, it's an egg of a Nomblot, same producer. But this one, it's used for the aging of the Riecine di Riecine. Riecine di Riecine, it's a cru wine that it's coming from the oldest vineyard, and it's totally fermented in concrete and aged in these special eggs for around 24 months.
Sir, what does this egg contribute to when you ferment the wine? How does it improve the wine?
So actually, the main reason is that the shape of the egg, it's helping with the moon phases. It's helping the wine being always in constant movement. So it's like a natural batonnage. You know that the lees, when are put in suspension during the batonnage, or in this case a natural batonnage, they protect the wine from oxidation. So it permits us to use less sulfur during the aging process, and it's also a structure from the lees. So we consider fundamental for that style, that kind of style of wine. So it permits us not using wood at all. So it's our characteristic for the Riecine di Riecine. During the fermentation, instead, the concrete that actually, to be honest, concrete was always a very typical tank of the Chianti Classico and Tuscany in general. It was waterproof with resin before. Then they were removed with the trend of during the 80s with the super Tuscan born. So everybody started to remove the concrete and use steel tanks. Now with these new knowledge, they start to reappear, and I have to admit that for me it's a perfect match with the Sangiovese of Gaiola and Chianti, because it exalts the fruit and at the same time the wine start having a development, because the porosity of the concrete, it's helping the wine developing since the very beginning. So usually our fermentation are conducted in concrete, and then we divided the wines in the lots, and they take different ways for the aging. So the Riecine di Riecine, I already mentioned that we age in the concrete eggs. The Chianti Classico, instead, we are using Old Tonneau, and for La Gioia, and that it's the other Super Tuscan, instead we are using New Tonneau. So it's the unique wine of Riecine where there is new wood.
Jacopo, let's talk about your wines now. I noticed, I'll put up a little slide here with a photo of all the bottles, but you do not use any of the grande botti. You normally use.
No, actually, this year I decided finally to convert. So I use like for the Sangiovese, I use only tonneau. It's 2 years now that are trying these 700 liters, so instead of 500 as the usual tonneau. And I bought also some concrete. So right now, so Laura, I'm bottling the 2021 the next week. That the new vintage, it's like a half, 50% it's concrete. The rest it's all tonneau that they have usually like 4 years. And for say, I'm using, for the moment, I'm using tonneau with a little bit of 700 liters.
I'm sorry, so people know that Laura is the Chianti Classico.
Laura is the Chianti Classico Annata. I don't produce the Riserva anymore. So we go from the Chianti Classico Annata to the Gran Selezione. Okay. And I bought for the first time a botte, 25 hectoliters. That I'm waiting in the next few days. That of course will be used for the Gran Selezione. For the other two, I use barrique, so the classic like 225 liters. I don't use any new oak anymore. Before I used like in the past, I started to use a lot of like mostly new oak. Now I'm using like usually it's like even on the last three ones, so the Gran Selezione and the Podalino and the Venti, I'm using like 50% of new oak, and the rest it's the second time that I use actually.
Okay, and we should talk a little bit about history with each of you too. So, Jacopo, you started. It was the late '90s, 1998, I think was the first.
Yeah. So my grandfather actually bought this property in 1945, but originally it wasn't like we had vineyards, we had sharecroppers at that time. But it was like a vacation estate. My grandfather bought as an investment. He was coming from Florence during the weekend. So he was producing a little bit of wine, but he was selling mainly juice, and he was producing a little bit of wine for himself, something that he was selling locally. Then at the beginning of the 70s, he decided to rent out everything. And when my mom, she started the agriturismo, so the vacation apartment at the end of the 80s, she started to manage again the vineyards. She sold grapes for a while. In 98, I started the proper wine production. We had to replant everything because the vineyards were completely like destroyed and old. Actually, here you see the map, between the vineyard, just to give you an idea. So between this small vineyard that is called Vigneto La Fonte and Vigneto Il Poggio, this part of wood that you have here in the middle, this is already Radda in Chianti. So if I'm sliding the vineyards, they would be under Radda. So
yeah,
that's...
I think you told me when I visited last year, you said like they want to claim you. You're in Castellina.
Yeah, and actually now I'm replanting in 2 months the Vigneto Il Poggio. That was the first one that we replanted in '97. The vineyard had some problems; it wasn't producing anything, so it wasn't worth like to keep the vineyard. So we decided just to replant the vineyard.
Okay, and how many hectares or acres of vineyards?
Well, so it's not big. Like it's like 11.5 hectares, considering the small like the Libya vineyard where I do the white. That it's tiny. It's like 2,000 meters actually. That vineyard. Okay. Yeah. I don't have unfortunately other places, because I'm like it's the beauty of the place, but it's also the problem because I'm on top of the hill and I'm surrounded by forest. So I don't have like free spaces to plant a new vineyard. This is like a little bit of the issue.
Well, I'm sure you have enough work to do. So you don't.
No, it's more than enough.
You're not Francesco Ragazzoli. So, and your mother, you mentioned, if people want to visit there and stay there, is a wonderful cook, and she runs a cooking school there, right?
Yeah. She does cooking classes from like 20 years. So we have. The agriturismo is fairly big because we have 9 apartments, 1 room, so we can host 41 people. They can stay. So as agriturismo is not small. Winery, just I'm saying for the Chianti Classico, small, medium, just considering Chianti Classico, there are a lot of wineries that they have like 5 or 6 hectares, but you have the guys also. So
Okay, Guido, let's talk about La Leccia. Get a picture up here of your estate.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the history of La Leccia.
See, La Leccia, now with this picture, you see that the tower that used to be there was unfortunately bombed during the Second World War, so it's not there anymore. It's been cut. The place was a very ancient castello that date back from 1077. It has been in the 1450 was under the domain of the Ricasoli family. And it's interesting to know that the wine was produced there since those days. There is a letter of Alberto Ricasoli telling home that he conquered La Leccia in 1452 and that he destroyed 50 barrels of wine. We don't know if he destroys them or he was drinking them. He was just telling the family that the wine was not there anymore.
Okay, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
We know that the wine has been produced in this area, the Chianti Classico area, since centuries. So probably 1,000 years since the Romans. At La Leccia, in our vineyards, we ferment the wines actually in stainless steel tanks, and we refine them between concrete tanks and botti of 20 hectoliters, and only the single vineyard Bruciagna goes into barrique for a small amount of time. The vineyards are all concentrated on Sangiovese. Actually, it's nice that we are here, the three of us, talking with you today, because we share the passion for Sangiovese, the three of us, and we have been having lots of dinner tasting the Sangiovese together. And for me, what is very, very important with the Sangiovese is more what we do in the vineyards and to try to find out the right time of the harvest and being sure that we don't harvest one day earlier or one day later. And we have 17 hectares of vineyards, so I think we are fairly small, or at least smaller from my previous experience. And this allowed us to really to focus and harvest section of vineyards separately, depending on the exact ripeness of the grapes. The harvest for us took a total usually of about 10 days. E quindi we can divide, we can stop, we can restart. We are very, very flexible on that. I think that I'm always afraid that we try to do our best in the cellar not to ruin the fruit or the perfect fruit we're able to harvest. No, this is what I like to say.
Right.
Quindi we try to be very gentle to the Sangiovese, as my colleagues are doing always.
Yeah,
Try to work. I would say that probably a sentence that could summarize is to work for the terroir, or in what's the English word for it? In assistance to the terroir. Ecco, try not to interfere with it.
To highlight the terroir.
Yeah.
Okay, and I want to give you equal time too, because you have people can stay at your apartments at the Castello, correct?
Yes, we have basically a 5-star hotel with 17 rooms and a restaurant there. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. The important part is the wine production. I know that the hospitality now takes most of our time, and sometimes, but what is great here, I think, are the wines.
Right. Yeah. That's why we're here today. But
yes,
you know, it's still a lot of people still haven't traveled for the last 2-3 years, so they're and You mentioned an
willing
agritourism.
to travel, yes. And I
Yeah.
can tell anybody that the best way to understand the Chianti Classico area and also the different uga is to travel and to see how the hills, or which are more into the valley, who are more into the hills, and taste the wines while they're traveling around Chianti Classico. For me, in my 25 years of work, I think all the wine region makes more sense once I was able to travel to them. So I deeply suggest to anybody to travel to our region.
Okay. Alessandro, you're going to look like the cheapskate here because you don't have any rooms. But before I get to you, and I'm kidding, because the wineries are so beautiful, we'll talk about the history. But since we had problems with Michele and Vittorio Rossi connecting, let me just mention a few facts about Querceto Poggio. They're in a totally different part of Chianti Classico. They're in a small area called Barbarino Tavernelli, and people know Castello Monsanto. They're very, very close.
I guess the Uga should be San Donato, if I'm not wrong.
San Donato. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. So they make 1, 2, 3, 4 wines: a Chianti Classico, which is 80% Sangiovese, which is the minimum, and then they have up to 20% a mix of so traditional varieties such as Ciliegiolo. Ciliegiolo is not so traditional in Chianti Classico, but Canaiolo, Malvasia, Colorino. They have a Chianti Classico Reserva, which is 100% Sangiovese. They have, I'll put the label up here, they have a Chianti Classico Gran Selezione. I get the label here. There we are. This is from a single vineyard called Le Cataste. An easy word to say. That's 100% Sangiovese. They're right in that Monsanto area, and the wines are 35% old, and the wine ages for 40 months in oak barrels. And they also make a Vinsanto, which is, we're concentrating on Chianti Classico today, but of course Vinsanto was the great dessert wine of Tuscany. So I just wanted to get that in there. Unfortunately, again, we couldn't connect with Michele and Vittorio. So now, Alessandro, let's talk about the history. At Riecine, you just celebrated the 50th anniversary, correct?
Yeah, correct. So we celebrate with a book that was edited by Slow Food Editore. So we are really proud of it. So it was totally out of sales. So we are going to publish soon the second edition. But yes, we celebrate the 50th anniversary in 2021 because actually the history of Riecine it's a bit older, because everything was belonging to the monastery of Badia Coltibuono. So we found during the research of the book some indication of on the registers of the Badia Coltibuono, on the registers of the monks, that they were mentioning Riecine since the 12th century. So, but the history of the wine of Riecine starts in the 20th century. So the first owners that came in Riecine in 71 was an Englishman, John Dunkley, with his wife Palmina Bagnano. That actually in Italy, the name of Bagnano is it's really famous because she was the nephew of a great Italian philosopher, where basically most of the high school in Italy are studying on the book. So it was the Bagnano Fornero. And they start the project from the very beginning. So they start they painted the logo of Riecine. They start to make wine there. Actually, we found in our collection some 70s bottles, because probably when they arrive in Gaiola and Chianti, probably when they purchased the house, they found probably 1 or 2 Damigianas. So they start to make some experimentation with the wine that they found in the basement, actually. And it's a fun history. So just to understand how it was for for them. So it was a joke, but it's we consider them our pioneers because they start everything. So you see, so John Dunkley was an expert of PR expert in London. So they make a research, and if you consider that we are speaking about the 70s, it was actually really ahead for that time. So they start make a projection of the wooden boxes. So at that epoch, where basically the Chianti Classico was just managed by a big group, there was no spaces for small producers to have such high quality packaging. Today it seems very easy to reach. You can order 10,000 labels easily, but at that time there wasn't in the area some labels supplier or box supplier. So you have to make a good research. So the font that John Dunkley decided to use was Bodoni, and also right now we are using it. So it was its actually we slightly revisit the logo, but we are still referring to the original one. So, and they they start to develop of the Gamma. Obviously, they start with the Chianti Classico. Then in 1975, they introduced the first Riserva of Riecine. So basically 4 years after they arrive in Gaiole. And in 82, I'm sorry, they start the production of La Gioia. So they was convinced that the best way how to produce a good wine was using just red varieties. So they start together with all the other pioneers of the time. They start make experimentation just with red varieties. And they make this wine in 82, La Gioia, that was at that time a blend of Sangiovese and Merlot. So we are really attached to John Dunkley and Palmino Bagnano. We are still following their instruction. Actually, you taste also 2 months ago when you visit Riecine, you taste the white that I start to reproduce after reading the letter of Luigi Veronelli to John Dunkley, that he was really amazed by this white produced by John Dunkley. I never had the chance to taste it. So my white today, it's actually my view about the white that they could produce at that time. Also with my experience, as I told you, my wife is Slovenian, so I try to make the experimentation with the maceration, because in my holidays in Slovenia, I just drink macerated wine. So I would like to give this contribution to John Dunkley, Palmino Bagnano, with my humble experience of macerated wine. And that's why we introduced the white.
By the way, I found the book.
Yeah. Here you have. So you can see the winery on top of the hill, and this one, it's our most recent vineyard. It was replanted in 2014. But that vineyard, the fun history is that it was belonging to Carlo Bagnano, the brother of Palmino Bagnano, that actually together they owned the hill. But now we are together in the. We put together the vineyard to the winery. Yes, this is our team.
Some photos in here too.
Yeah, plus Mira, the dog of Palmiro. We are really proud of her. So.
Yeah, she's a nice dog. I remember her. So the few minutes we have left, let's talk about, since we talked about Gran Selezione a lot, let's talk about each version of Gran Selezione. Guido, let's start with you and your Gran Selezione.
For me, the Gran Selezione is a single vineyard, comes from the vineyard of Bruciagna. That is the highest one in elevation that we have. The highest part is about 500 meters on the sea level. Is all planted with Sangiovese. And as you know, John, I came to La Leccia and I decided to accept this position and to manage La Leccia because I like two things at La Leccia. First of all was the concentration on the Sangiovese, and the other fact was the organic farming, which for me was essential to the longer life of the vines and to the respect of the nature that is giving us such a product. So for us, it's just the selection that has been made with this vineyard that originally, before the concept of the Gran Selezione was introduced, it was a Riserva. So the estate has always been producing a single vineyard, but was just Riserva Bruciagna. And then as soon as the rules were introduced of the Gran Selezione, we changed it into the Gran Selezione.
And the current release is what year?
The current release on the market now, there is 2018, in July 2020, in July 2023, 2020 vintage.
Okay, great. Jacopo, let's talk about your SEI. And explain that name. SEI, of course, SEI is the word for the number 6.
Yeah, it's a number 6 because this wine actually it's a single vineyard. It's a selection. It's not an overall selection, but it's a selection of 2 sections of our main vineyard that actually measure 6.6 hectares. And the yield per hectare is 6,666 vines. So that's why 6.
That's a lot of sense. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and then actually my mom, she was born 6/6/1946. So say it's, I can tell you also that actually the 500 liters, they don't know they contain 666.66 bottles. So just, but this is came after, you know, at the beginning was the vineyard and my mom, of course, you know, just. Okay. And basically, this is a Sangiovese 100%. I started pretty immediately when they introduced the Gran Selezione in 2014. I decided to stop the Riserva, and I did a new wine completely. That it's a Sangiovese 100%. So the first vintage of this wine was 2011. I didn't produce the 14, but you know, just I started with 2011. For the moment, as I mentioned before, I use tonneau, so the 500 liters and a little bit of 700 for 18 months, and then I do 12 months refining in the bottle.
Okay, and the current vintage is?
It's 19.
Okay, and how many bottles of that do you produce?
I do, that's proportion in considering how many bottles I do with the Chianti Classico. The normal, it's quite a lot because I do approximately 10,000 bottles of the Gran Selezione.
Right. We know how many bottles did you produce normally of the Gran Selezione?
Usually it's between around 7,000 to 8,000 bottles.
Okay. Alessandro, let's finish up with your Gran Selezione, and this is your first release.
Yeah, first I want to give a suggestion to Jacopo. He should charge 666 euro per bottle.
Yeah.
So to complete the features. So jokes apart, so the Gran Selezione of Riecine, as you can see, it's a Vignaggitori. Vignaggitori, it's a vineyard that Riecine was managing since more than 10 years. It's located exactly in front of the winery of Riecine. It's on the same exposition. It's south facing. It's 500 meters on the sea level. And actually it's the second oldest vineyard after the vineyard where we produce Riecine, and it was planted in 74. We fermented it. It's a very small production because the yield it's around 35 quintals per hectare, part because it's a very hot vineyard, part because we prune like that to have a very small yield, but everything is fermented in concrete, and then it's aged for 30 months for 24 months in Old Tonneau plus 6 months of bottle aging. So consortium it's indicating minimum 3 months of bottling. For me, the 6 months minimum, it's the minimum quantity for the bottle aging of this wine. And to be honest, we are really proud of Vigna Gittori. So when the previous owner decided to start massaging the idea of selling that vineyard, we didn't think twice to go ahead with the purchase, and actually we finally purchased in 2019. That's another reason why we decided to start with the Gran Selezione. Also because my daughter born in 2019, so that's another good reason why to start the Gran Selezione. I give you a suggestion. So my second son will born in February 2013. So I hope 2023 will be another good vintage like 2019 to celebrate. So that's good.
Fingers crossed. Well, great. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and Guido,
Thank you, Tom.
I visited Alessandro and with Jacopo at their winery a couple times, but we had dinner when I was there a few months ago, but I have to come visit.
Please.
And, I will actually be there in January, so we can work that out. So, and then hopefully I'll be able to meet and visit also with Michele and Vittorio at Querceto Poggio. So I appreciate your time today, and you know, this was a great conversation. So continued success.
Thank you to you, Tom. It
Thank
was
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you, Tom. It was a great pleasure as usual. So
Thank you. Buon lavoro. Ciao.
Grazie.
Grazie mille. Ciao, 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 ciao a tutti. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
And married you too. Okay. All right. Ciao, ciao.
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 Screw that.